What's up, it's Marco, Sage of Soccer, and today I'll be doing a preview of World Cup Group H. I figured everybody's going to be going through A through H, so why not start at the back? I mean, I did Group B because that's the USA's group, and Group A because there's a non-0% chance that the USA will face the team from Group A in the knockout round. But now that we're here, let's go to Group H, and I think it's a very interesting group. You have a teams with a ton of talent, will have a lot of amazing players in their last World Cup, Cristiano Ronaldo, Luis Suarez, and it's just a tournament that seems like any team can really take this group. Portugal, they're obviously the favorites. They've got a great squad. Uruguay, they've got a lot of talent, but I think they're kind of in between generations, and I think they're a little bit vulnerable. Then we have Ghana, who I'll get to them. They've got a crazy story, and a South Korean team with Heung-min Son leading them, who is probably the best player in this group at this moment in time and can make something happen. It's going to be a really fun group, so let's get into it. Up first, I'm going to be talking about Portugal, and they're a squad with, I think, a good amount of momentum heading into this tournament. They still have some players from the Euro 2016 triumph and a good Nations League win as well, and I think there's a lot of winning mentality in the team. Manager Fernando Santos, he plays them in a bit of a pragmatic style that has sound defense, an attack that never really dominates a game. Even in their Euro win, they were only winning like 1-0. They didn't win a game except for that one game against Wales in 90 minutes. But it does appear to be pretty effective, even if it's not the greatest style. I think Portugal are the favorites in this group just through the sheer amount of talent that they have throughout the squad, and they could easily challenge for the World Cup title. Again, to where I think they will actually place a bit later, but it's going to be really fun to watch this team play. I think the biggest question for Portugal is what they're going to be doing up front, specifically with Cristiano Ronaldo. Their greatest ever player is still playing, and there's still some talent in there, but he's clearly a shadow of his former self and might end up hurting the team if he gets put into the squad. This question has come up whether he should even be starting for the team at his age. Oh, let's get into the actual tactics of the team. Tactically, they've been pretty flexible. They've recently been setting up in either a 4-3-3 variant or a 4-2-3-1. I don't think that really affects the player selection for me because, generally 3 midfielders, 3 attackers, 4 defenders. We'll have some variance with who will be playing. Will there be a 10? Will there be 2 defensive midfielders? So I'll get into that a little bit later. But just for this team, under goalkeeper, and goalkeeper is a pretty tough choice because Rui Patricio has been a veteran who's been starting for them for a long time. A starter who I feel like has been very underrated throughout his prime. But his prime is over and there are pretty big signs of declines. And Diego Costa is an amazing goalkeeper with just really good shot stopping ability, and his ability with his feet is special. I'm expecting him to get a move to the Premier League to a team like maybe Manchester United or Tottenham to replace one of their aging goalkeepers sooner rather than later. And I think that he will be starting for Portugal, and he'll be doing a good job. At center back, there's only been a few players who have been even tested, despite there being a good amount of solid young Portuguese center backs. The only 3 that have really been playing are Pepe, Ruben Diaz, and Danilo Pereira. And I think Pereira is probably going to be the backup for this group, so Ruben Diaz will likely be the starter. And man, just when I don't have much to say about a player, it's for all the right reasons. Just extremely solid, good on the ball, very good, especially compared to his partner Pepe, who we'll get into, but dominant in the air, Premier League Player of the Year, amazing player for Man City, and just a really solid center back that Portugal are lucky to have. Then we've got Pepe, the veteran we all know and hate, still going strong at 39, unfortunately. He somehow kept his athleticism and is still a good player defensively. He's dealing with an injury right now, but he should be back for the World Cup. And, man, we know that he has a mean streak in him, to say the least. And I think that could lead to mistakes, and especially at his age, he has some mistakes in him, but he has got a very reliable partner next to him in Ruben Diaz, and I think that it's going to be a very solid back line for Portugal. At fullback, I think we can expect to see João Cancelo and Nuno Mendes. João Cancelo has been world-class for Man City as an inverted left back, but I think he'll do fine on the right. He seems to be playing a bit better in that special formation that Pep Guardiola is employing, but I think he's got an amazing cross on him for a right back. I've always been a little bit disappointed that he doesn't get to show it off at Man City. So I think he'll get a chance to show his attacking talent even on the right. And I think he's definitely the option to start. Diego Dalla is a good option as well as a backup, but I think you have to go with João Cancelo. And then Nuno Mendes is likely to start over Rafael Guerreiro, though Mendes is dealing with an injury, so Guerreiro might get in the team. Mendes, he's burst onto the scene with Paris Saint-Germain, and he's looked like PSG's best player in some games, and considering they have Neymar, Mbappe, Messi in their squad, that is saying a ton. He's an extremely dangerous attacking left back with, I think, world-class potential, but he is still a very young player. He can make mistakes defensively, he can still be raw in attack, but he's a great option to have in this Portuguese team. I think with the defense and goalkeeper, like, you would kind of get like an objective best 11 because I think those are the best choices available to Portugal, or at least in the circumstances that Fernando Santos has been playing the team. So I think that back line, if healthy, isn't up for debate. But when we get further forward, it is basically just opinion. There's so much talent in the squad, so many really good players that I think that starting 11 changes depending on opposition, on form, who's healthy, chemistry. Like, there are a ton of different variants in this squad. So I'm just going to run through every player, then I'm going to go through who I think should be starting at the end. William Carvalho is a really good defensive option. He can keep the ball into the team, really good defender who can help the squad if they need to be more defensive in games. I'm saying defense a lot for him because that's his game in the midfield. Though not bad on the ball as well, but I think he's a bit limited in his skill set, especially compared to Ruben Neves, who is a very good defender as well, but smooth on the ball. We've seen him with Wolves a lot, do a ton of great work, and he should probably be moving on to a bigger club sooner rather than later. A very good player, Ruben Neves, that I think he'll be starting no matter what. Then we've got another option who I'm not too sure about. He's a young player, but I think he'd be really good for them. Vitinha. He's been very good for PSG lately, just keeping the ball in possession, and he's an extremely technical player. He doesn't offer the defense, and I don't think he will start, but the game that Portugal played against Spain recently showed us, it's that they could really use somebody who can help them keep the ball and help dominate play, and I think he can provide that role for this Portugal team. Then we have Bruno Fernandes, a very good option at the 10, can make goal contributions out of nowhere, really good at finding those, can make a great pass. He's been really solid for Manchester United, one of their best players since he's gotten there. I think the formation does have to be made around him. I think he does have to be playing as a 10, but I think that's a sacrifice you have to be willing to make. On the other hand, we've got Bernardo Silva, who's got the versatility to fit wherever. He can be dangerous on the right, he can keep the ball in the middle, and his defending's come a long way. He's a guaranteed starter for this Portugal team, and an elite player. Like, probably the best guy on this team, I would say, at this moment in time. Maybe we can argue for Ruben Diaz or his other Man City teammate, João Cancelo, but just such a good player that's got a long way, just come so far since he's come to Man City, and I think he's got to be a starter for them, and he's going to be dangerous. Then further forward, we've got Rafael Leao, who has been looking amazing for AC Milan recently, cutting in from the left-hand side. He's a dynamic he's a dynamic option that is going to find some goals. Like, he's been extremely talented for Milan. I think he's going to become a world-class player in the future, and I think he's got to be in this team. Then you have Diego Jota up front. He's been really good for Liverpool, just coming back from an injury. He can score combined with midfields. He's not even bad in the air. He's a great option who can play a variety of positions. And then João Felix is another option. He hasn't been playing that well. He's in a pretty bad fit right now at Atletico Madrid, but he's a talented attacker who I feel like could be a very good false nine who could pop with goals and combine very well with his attacking talent. And then Cristiano Ronaldo, an all-time great, isn't doing him justice. Elite player. We know all the debates we have. I think he's universally a top 5 player of all time, though. But he is well past his prime. And he has not been playing well for Manchester United. And I don't think that he should be starting for this team. He still has some athleticism like Pepe does. And the goal threat still exists, but I feel like he hasn't been contributing enough, especially when you compare him to a João Felix, a Diego Jota, what they can provide to this team, even a Bernardo Silva playing as a false 9. And Ronaldo's not even a true natural as a striker, and I feel like that's where he'd have to play. So I'm not sure if I would start him. Personally, from my starting 11, I'd go with Costa in goal, Ruben Diaz and Pepe as center backs, Cancelo on the right, Mendes on the left. I'd actually go with Ruben Neves and Vitinha as defensive midfielders, Bruno as a 10, Bernardo Silva on the right, Rafael Leo on the left, and Diego Jota up front. It's not perfect. I can see a bit of weaknesses defensively, but I think Ruben Neves can do a job. I'm confident in Ruben Diaz as well as Pepe, and I think this Portugal team needs the attacking talent, and I think Vitinha can be a huge help to this team as they look to, honestly, try to go and win this World Cup. If I had to predict the squad, I'd say it'd be the same goalkeeper and defense. I'd say William Carvalho and Neves will be playing as a dual six. Then probably Jota on the left, Bernardo Silva on the right, Bruno as the 10, and Ronaldo up front. That could still do very well. And Ronaldo can get going at a World Cup. It's a World Cup. Like, there are only so few games. Honestly, Ronaldo might just be coasting through this Manchester United season. I would not be surprised if he's saving all his energy for the World Cup and he just turns the corner. But that's not an assumption that I'm willing to make for my personal team, but I wanted to throw that out there. And man, this team is so deep. I didn't even mention like a Renato Sanchez, a João Moutinho, Guedes, Inacio, and Bebe. But I think they're favorites to make it through this group. It could be tough for them. Uruguay beat them last World Cup. South Korea and Ghana could trip them up, and the pragmatic style of play makes it tough to score multiple goals. So like one break could change the game, and like a Heung-min Son could really make a difference in a game like that. But it would be a huge upset if Portugal were to get defeated by one of them. And I think they got to be the favorites to win this group. Then I think after that, should they reach the knockout round, Brazil is likely to win their group. So I think they'll have a very winnable matchup in the round of 16. But at that point, they're going to be facing either Belgium, Spain, or Germany in the quarterfinals. And I think it's going to be tough for them to progress past that point. So I'd say it's realistic to expect Portugal to reach the finals. They've got quarterfinals. They've got a ton of talent, and they honestly could go further. I mean, Belgium, Spain, Germany, those are winnable games for Portugal. And I think it could happen, but it's going to be tough. And I think they'll need a bit of luck at that point. They'll need Ronaldo to be on fire or another player to really break out this tournament. But I think they are contenders for the tournament crown and should be able to go far. Next, we're on to Uruguay. And after they had a rough start to World Cup qualifying, Uruguay fired their longtime manager and brought in Diego Alonso as their new coach. Alonso has been very flexible tactically, so it's hard to say what we could really expect from them, but they've been playing very well. They got 4 wins on the bounce since appointing them and qualified for the World Cup. I think I can expect them to play direct against top opposition. They've got enough defenders and good attacking talent that I think could really help them. But when they have the advantage over teams, I think they do have the ability to build out of the back. They are very flexible, and it's tough to even gauge what formation they will play. I think this team has an issue that I mentioned with teams like Wales and Ecuador, and they're kind of in between generations. They have some aging talents in like Luis Suarez, Edison Cavani, maybe even a Diego Godin, and there's a lot of like exciting young talent in Darwin Nunez and Valverde, but there's a lack of elite talent in their prime, and I think that's a huge concern that limits their potential. Tactically, I'm not sure what they will use. They've used a lot of different formations, but I'm thinking against the top teams, they'll probably go back to a 4-4-2. I think that allows them to get 2 strikers on the field, which is huge for them, and they used it some in World Cup qualifying. For individuals, it's tough to say who will be in goal. Sergio Rocher has been playing a lot for Uruguay recently, while the 36-year-old Fernando Muslera has recovered from injury. Muslera has been in goal for Uruguay at the last 3 World Cups, and he's been good since returning from injury, though Rocher has been playing goalkeeper for them, and he's a solid keeper, but I don't think he really brings anything special to the table, and I expect Muslera to get his spot back come the World Cup. At center back, there were a lot of options, but injuries have really limited the choices of this Uruguay side. Jose Maria Jimenez has been healthy recently, but he's not guaranteed to stay healthy. He is looking good right now, and I think he will be able to start for the World Cup, but he might not be 100%. And also, Ronald Arroyo from Barcelona is going to be missing the World Cup. He could play either right back or center back for them, and he would definitely be a starter. Sebastian Caceres has been an option for them recently at center back, but with Sebastian Costas returning from injury, I think he should be the partner for Jimenez. And this isn't really an ideal choice. He does still have a couple of mistakes in him, especially playing in a back 4, but I think he's the likely option for them. Diego Godin is still out there, but he is aging and he's not the player he used to be. Though form is temporary, class is permanent. And also, who knows? Maybe he could be a good option for them. At left back, Napoli's Mateus Oliveira looks to be their starter. Very good in attack. He's been having some really good moments defensively as well. He's got a lot of talent there. Though I think he is still growing. He can be a bit more of a wingback at times. And I think there are a couple of mistakes in him, especially in a back line that's not going to be perfect, but he's an extremely talented player. On the right, with the Barcelona man missing, there's two options in Varela and Damian Suarez. Suarez is 34, but he only recently made his debut with Uruguay, and at the moment Suarez is playing in Getafe, with Getafe in La Liga, while Varela's on the bench for Flamengo in Brazil. Varela does have time to turn things around, and he's a player that I like, and I'm rooting for him because he's just a guy. I thought he should have gotten a couple more chances at Manchester United, but I think for now we can expect Damian Suarez to start. He is actually playing for Getafe. He's been playing very well for them in a couple of moments. Like, he's been a La Liga starter, and that's more than you can say for a lot of players in this squad. So I'd expect Suarez to be the starter for them at fullback. In the center of midfield, Rodrigo Bentancur and Federico Valverde are guaranteed to play and are part of that young midfield coming up for this Uruguay squad. Both have a ton of energy and are great box-to-box presence. Bentancur just has played such a great role for Real Madrid, helping them win the Champions League. Though I think he'll have to take on like a bigger role for this Uruguay squad, and one that he might be uncomfortable with. But I think he's got the ability to step into it and play it very well. There's also a chance Lucas Torreira comes in off the bench as a more defensive option, pushing Valverde further up the field, or he could start in a three-man midfield. Then on the wings probably the weakest position for this Uruguay squad. There are a ton of options that I'm not really sure who will start. You have Nicolas de la Cruz, Manchester United's Loni Palestri. You've got a Conobio, Diego Rossi we saw him at LAFC in the MLS, now at Fenerbahce, and there are good options. I think De La Cruz is guaranteed to be a starter. He's got some good technical ability and is a solid all-around player. I think Rossi would be good off the bench as a more direct winger, like a good option to bring on late in games. Palistri, he's kind of raw, but I think he's a good talent option. It's tough to predict the wing. Nunez might play there. I'd probably go with the Manchester United man on one of the sides. It's tough to say. Maybe you put Valverde there and you start a defensive midfielder. I'm not too sure, but it's definitely one of the weaker positions. But one of the stronger ones is up top, for sure. Even though his career is winding down, Luis Suarez is an all-time great player, and I'm expecting him to be on the field. And Darwin Nunez has flashed his talent for Liverpool and looks set to carry the torch of Uruguayan strikers going back to Diego Forlan. I think Nunez will handle a lot more of the pressing duties, and I really think you can have a great partnership with Luis Suarez. We've seen Luis Suarez get the best out of Edison Cavani, Diego Forlan, Lionel Messi, Neymar. Did great for Atletico Madrid as well. Like, he's such a good player that I think you need to have him on the field. Like, I mean, just one of the best strikers. I have him personally as the best striker of the decade in the 2010s. Lewandowski has a good argument, but he didn't really like break out onto the scene and become like the world-class man he is today until 2020. So I think Luis Suarez is the best striker of the 2010s. Like, that's how much I respect him. And then you still have Edison Cavani, who can come off the bench and make something happen. Maxi Gomez is an option as well. It's a Uruguay team full of talent, but as the striker partnership will show you, it's in between generations. You don't really have a star player at the peak of their powers, and because of that, I see them struggling to beat some big teams. Though with the form they showed under Alonso and a couple of really good games in the South American World Cup qualifying, I expect them to get the better of South Korea, and man, that Ghana game is going to be really interesting. But I think they're able to get at least 4 points, and I think they get out of the group with Portugal finishing in first, Uruguay coming in second. However, if they finish second, that means they're likely to face Brazil in the round of 16. And again, this is the World Cup. Anything can happen. Maybe they won't even face Brazil if they finish there. But I think that their ceiling is probably the knockout round and going out in the round of 16. Then we have South Korea. It's a team that's steadily improved, and I feel like they could even threaten a top team like we saw them do against Germany at the last World Cup. Heung-min Son is a world-class player leading the way. I think he's the best player in this group. But there's more than him. There's some good players in the squad. Tactically, I think that they're just going to end up playing a bit more defensively. We haven't seen them face a team like Portugal or Uruguay since a 5-1 loss to Brazil, so we can't really predict if their tactics will stay the same that they were in Asian qualifying, but I think we can expect them to bunker down and look for the counterattack. This is something that I will be saying for like a lot of teams, but when you play like that, anything is really possible, though it's unlikely. Tactically, hasn't really been a set formation, but I think there's been a pattern in the squad of them playing like a back four, two midfielders who will do some defensive work, and then a front four free to really get the best out of their talents. Then going to the actual team, I think in goal, King Sung-ju will be in goal. I think he's fine. He's not even bad with his feet, but he's only so good as a goalkeeper that I won't expect him to be doing too much. Also, tell me if I'm getting like the Korean name order right, because I want to get these issues sorted out now before the World Cup starts. Center back will likely be a strength for the South Korea team. Kim Min-jae is a rock in the center of defense. He's looked really solid for Napoli. He's a top athlete, good in the air, and he can hit a pass. Like, it's similar to Ruben Diaz. When I don't have a lot to say about a player, it's a very good sign, and I think he can put the world on notice this tournament. His partner will likely be Kim Young-gwan, who has a lot of experience. He might end up having 100 caps by the end of this World Cup. He's a former futsal national, so he has some good ability on the ball and is a very experienced player, but he's never left Asia, and you can only expect him to be so good. And that's a similar story to the fullbacks. Kim Jin-soo will play, and he's a very good athlete, but again, like, you can only expect, like, so much out of just a K-League player. And similarly at right back, there are a ton of options. Kim Tae-hwan, Kim Moon-han, and a younger player in Yoon Jong-gyu could be there. And they could all play, but I don't think it really matters. They're similar in that they can, like, they're decent attackers in the K-League. They're pretty good athletes, but none of them are going to be great players. And, like, I don't think any of them will be a real threat to Rafael Leo or any of those dynamic attackers that they can expect to see. In the midfield, the two defensive options that I mentioned will likely be Jung-woo Young, who'll be a defensive midfielder. He's playing in Qatar right now, and he'll be their top choice as a six. And then Hwang In-bom is a good box-to-box midfielder from Olympiacos. I think those two will help protect the back line and allow the attacking players to go to work. Then in the attack, Jung-woo Young is a very good athlete with ability to press opponents and pretty good in the final third. When I was watching him, got a little bit of Brendan Aronson vibes. I think he could be a very good player for this Korean team. Hwang Hee-chan has been a dynamic attacker for Wolves. We've seen him have a lot of good moments in the Premier League, and I'm expecting him to be very good for this Korean side. Then you have Lee Jae-seung, who's a midfielder for Mainz, who brings some creativity along with energy. And while he'll likely come off the bench, Lee Kang is an extremely talented midfielder that I've been impressed with. Then you've got Hwang Lee-jo, who's a target man that recently signed for Nottingham Forest, loaned out to Olympiacos. He could be a good option for them if they want it like a true striker. And then Hyungmin Son, like, just an extremely talented player. And of those, 4 of them should start. I'm really hoping that Son, Jung-woo Young, Hwang Hee-chan, and Lee Jae-sung start in a fluid front four where the attackers can go where they want. I think that could really disrupt some of the defenses, and I think it could be dangerous for the South Korean team and really try to make something happen for them. This is a Korean team with star power. They have some very good players and some good experience in its lesser talent as well. I think there's some good attacking depth for late in games as well, and if they're able to hold a team like Uruguay without a goal, and I think they will be able to find a goal against them, and there is a real possibility of advancing. However, that is just a possibility. I think they have a chance, and probably a better chance than Ghana, in my opinion, to get through. But, and they do have the best player in the group, so anything is possible, but I'm expecting them to go out in the group stage. And lastly, we have Ghana. And man, this Ghana team is very hard to talk about because right after they qualified for the World Cup, they committed a ton of dual nationals. I think there were 5 players like Iñaki Williams, Tariq Lamptey, and others. And I think Selasu committed to play for the squad for the first time. And I have to imagine that will kill the chemistry in this team. Because it was a team, like, already fighting an uphill battle. Even with all the talent they have now, like, it'd be tough to get past Portugal and Uruguay, not to mention South Korea. So, does not set them up well for this tournament, but I really like the signs for the future. And there is a lot of talent on this team. As I mentioned before, I can see this flying off the rails and going poorly, but there's a chance it doesn't. And what if everything goes right for them? Because of all these changes, like, I can't even imagine, like, I'm not going to try to predict the lineup or try to predict what tactics that they're going to be using. So I'm going to go with my personal best 11 that I'd like to see them play with, and I'm going to assume they're going to be playing attacking, because you don't bring Tariq Lamptey into the fold to park the bus against teams. I think they're going to be going for it. So I'm going to be going with a bit of like a 4-3-3, one defensive midfielder, two attacking midfielders, and starting out at the back, I think the Orlando Pirates goalkeeper, Richard Ofori, is a good option in goal, though Charlton's Joe Walcott has been making some noise. He's been on the rise. He's been at Bristol before leaving them, or Bristol City, and he's been like going out on loan to like, I think it was like the 7th tier, then he rise to like conference, then the 5th tier, then League 2, now he's at League 1, and I really like seeing that progress, but I don't think he starts over Ofori. Then at center back, Lester Zamarty has played center back for them. I like having Marty in the squad, and Selasu's a very good partner. He only recently made his debut, but whatever. This is this team. On the left, I'll stick with technically a Chelsea player, Baba Rahman. On the left, though, Gideon Mensah has looked very good in Ligue 1. And on the right, I'm going to be rocking with my boy Tariq Lamptey. He's such a fun player to watch. And if Jordan Ayew's on the right ahead of him, he could have some defensive cover and really be able to go to work even in a back four. I think he'd be fun to watch, and man, they could be able to make something happen. At defensive midfield, I'm going to be asking Partey to do a lot of work. He's been a great defensive midfielder for Arsenal, and I'm going to be asking him to cover a lot of ground, help keep this team going, and I think he's got the ability to do it. Then in midfield, I'm going to be putting in midfield. I'm going with Ajax's Kudas. He's been a very dynamic attacker for Ajax. He's been playing a bit more of a striker lately, though. But he's got some decent defensive ability in him, and I think I really want his creativity in the midfield. So I'm putting him in the midfield, and ahead of him, there's also going to be another talented player, Abdul Fatawu Isahaku. He's a Sporting Lisbon, a wonder kid. Like, he's just got a winner for Ghana in a recent friendly, and while he's still like a raw prospect, I think he can make some magic happen for this team, and I really want to get as much talent on the field as possible, and especially for the future, he's going to be an amazing talent. Then I mentioned before, Jordan Ayew on the right for his work rate. Then we've got the dynamic Suleimana on the left, and the beast Iñaki Williams is going to be up front. I think this is a team that could be really fun, and you've got Felix John coming off the bench, and Andre Ayew as well. Like, there's a lot of talent in this team. And the way I'm feeling them, they're probably a bit weaker defensively, especially playing Kudos deeper is a bit questionable. But I want to get the talent on the field. I want to see what could happen if everything goes right for this Ghana team. And I think this is one of the best ways to do it. If everything goes right, I think they can score on any opponent, and reaching the knockout round is possible. Portugal's going to be very tough to beat, but I think they could get a goal past Uruguay. And if they're able to lock down the defense, anything's like possible, especially like that game against Uruguay is going to be huge, because there are still some players like Ayew, he remembers 2010, and that Uruguay game might be the game of the group stage. It is going to be fun to watch. I mentioned before, I think that this goes off the rails, and they'll likely go out early. I could see them not getting a point, but with the talent they have, I think it could be fun, and the future looks bright for Ghana. My prediction for the actual games: on the first day, I'd say Uruguay beats South Korea and Portugal handles Ghana. Then on the second day, I think it's tough to predict, but I think Heung-min Son will help Korea get past Ghana and get the win, while Portugal will defeat Uruguay. And then on the last day, I think Ghana pulls everything out, gets a draw against Uruguay, while Portugal is able to beat Korea, leaving Portugal topping the group and Uruguay advancing. And yeah, that's my predictions for this group. Man, it's going to be really fun. This is a very good Portuguese squad. Getting to watch Heung-min Son play, Luis Suarez's last ride. And, man, that Ghana team, anything can happen with there. It's going to be fun to watch all of them. And, yeah, that's all I really have to talk about. I'm looking forward to this group and watching every team this World Cup. So, yeah, that's all I'll talk about. See ya.